Welcome to the Immigration Therapist Podcast, a podcast for therapists that want to learn more about immigration evaluations and for attorneys that want to learn more about the emotional and psychological aspects of these evaluations. So, on today's episode, we're going to talk about how evaluations can feel repetitive after a while. So here's why I think this happens. As therapists, we are, especially social workers, we are trained to be client-centered. And what this means is that, we meet the client where they are. So, a client comes in, for example, for therapy, right? So a client might come in asking for help with their anxiety, but then after a few sessions you learn that they are in a horrible job, they are in a terrible relationship, their lifestyle is just not helpful. They drink too much, they don't eat properly. So there's all these circumstances around what contributes to their diagnosis, their chief complaint. But again, client-centered means that we start where the client is. So if they're not ready to talk about their drinking, then you don't. If they're not ready to talk about their eating habits or their job, they love their job and there's nothing they want to do about it, then you can't really, you kind of have to coast that circumstance, that factor. So going back to immigration evaluations, why do they feel repetitive after a while? Because again, they're client-centered. So, this is a very niched area. People are coming in for the sole reason of being analyzed and assessed for immigration purposes. So it is very repetitive. They're coming in. There's only a few types of evaluations. So we've already talked about them, the VAWA, hardship, asylum, UNT visa, cancellation of removal, and so on. So these evaluations, if you think about it, it's not that much. And if you think about how many immigrants are applying for green cards per year, it's a lot. So if you are a busy therapist that does a lot of immigration evaluations, after a while, you'll notice that these can feel repetitive. And you'll definitely feel this, especially when you're, editing the evaluations after you're done and you're editing it and you are reading over your evaluation to make sure that it's, grammatically correct or, for all those things. So they can feel very repetitive. So, for example, you might see a lot of the same diagnoses. You'll see a lot of anxiety, a lot of GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. You might see a lot of PTSD. You might see a lot of, unspecified depressive disorder or major depressive disorder. You'll see a lot of the same diagnoses. You'll see a lot of, your clinical perspective, meaning the part that we put our clinical impression or our opinion might kind of be the same over and over again. And again, I think that's because of client-centered. So the point of today's episode is just to talk about that, to kind of normalize the fact that, these evaluations can feel a little repetitive. So I also want to, set out a call, kind of like a call to action for therapists, if I may. And for us to never lose sight of, again, the client-centered. Client-centered means that, yes, this might be your 5th VAWA client this month, but, their story is different than the previous, and the next. Maybe it's their upbringing that's different. Maybe it's not generalized anxiety disorder. Maybe it's unspecified anxiety disorder. Maybe there's panic disorder. There's different circumstances. Maybe the tone of this evaluation was financial abuse versus the previous one that was psychological abuse. So yes, these can feel repetitive, but I think that I personally always love to, go above and beyond for clients, and I know a lot of therapists do because again, we are in the service industry. We love to be of help, which is why we chose this profession in the first place. So I always want to make sure that we are tapping into that. How can we help this client uniquely in comparison to the previous client? How can we be of specific help to this client, and make sure their story is told in an authentic, serving way to this client. We can't get away from these evaluations being repetitive because they are. I mean, there is a template to all of these. It's for us social workers, it's kind of like a biopsychosocial. For those of us that work with insurance, when you do a biopsychosocial, it can feel a little bit repetitive. You're asking the same questions, the same titles, the same sections, of the biopsychosocial can be the same and repetitive. If, for example, if you came from an agency that all you did was intakes. So after a while, a lot of these clients a lot of your day can feel repetitive because that's all you did, intakes all day. So it's the same with immigration evaluations. They can be very repetitive in terms of the template, in terms of the order of things, in terms of, like I said, the clinical perspective, the diagnosis. But, I just want to make sure that we always keep in mind, they're client-centered. So every client has a unique and distinct perspective and story. So I think that as long as we tap into that and write authentic, ethical evaluations, I think we'll do them service. So I hope this helps both therapists and immigration attorneys. And as always, you can catch us online on our website, or you can find us on immigration_evaluations_center. I'll see you in the next one.